takeaway from this case, and the chief will speak to this in just a few moments, is if you're going to have the privilege of being a gun owner, which you do, very much so in the state, and you also have the responsibility of knowing what the rules are.
Welcome back. The prosecutor out in Lake St. Louis, in St. Charles County, I should say, talking about a case in Lake St. Louis where a resident shot and killed a man that he caught stealing his car earlier this month. They've now filed murder charges against that homeowner. We're going to talk about that this hour because if you are a concealed carry holder and you have questions as to why this guy got charged, I think it's important to talk about what the circumstances were, what your responsibilities are if you have the right in the state of Missouri to carry a gun. And now, because the law is going to change, a lot more people are going to be able to carry a gun legally, sometimes without even getting a concealed carry permit. And I think this is an important conversation to have. Education is always a good thing. Welcome back to the Mark Cox Show. Lots to talk about this hour because, I'm also going to give away a couple tickets to TSO, but there was a change put up on Donald Trump's website. And it was brought to my attention, and I dug through it on his website, and I was unaware of it. I'll have to be honest with you. But he is calling for national right to carry. I did not know that. That we should get some. Do we have an applause button up there somewhere? Because that definitely. Thank you, Liz, for doing that for me. Donald Trump had stated the position, and you just got to hope that this is part of what's going to happen once he takes office. He says the right of self-defense doesn't end at your driveway. It's why he's had a concealed carry permit for years and why tens of millions of Americans do. He wants that permit to be valid in all 50 states. He said a driver's license works in every state. It's common sense that a concealed carry permit should work in every state. If we can do that for driving, which is a privilege, not a right, then we can surely do it for concealed carry, which is a right, not a privilege. I was thrilled to see this and wanted to point it out to you in case you hadn't, and let's hope that that is legislatively part of what they work on once they get the big issues out of the way here, once this administration starts. All right, let's get back to what happened in Lake St. Louis. So a man, just to set this up, if you haven't read the story, named Charles Flagg, 39 years old, hears his car alarm going off, looks outside and sees a man walking around his car, retrieves his handgun apparently, hears the car alarm going off again, goes outside to see the guy in his car, and opens fire. Now, exactly what transpired there, I guess they're going to work out in court if he felt that the guy was pulling at him. He said he yelled for the man to stop, but the car backed away from him. This is according to the prosecutor, at which time the guy fired a single shot at the windshield. Then the guy drove the car off the driveway. Flagg walked toward it, and he fired three to five more times at the driver's side window, and they found the car about a block away from the home. In the driver's seat was the suspect. This last name was Jimenez. He was dead. And he was struck at least one time in the chest. So those are the facts of the case as we know them based on what the prosecutor has said out in St. Charles County. I've asked my friend John Henderson to join us. John is the owner of the Range St. Louis West. It's where I went out and retook my concealed carry class not all that long ago. Of course, the Range is also a sponsor of our show. But John, I just wanted to tap into your knowledge on this. What was your reaction when you heard this story?
Well, anytime you hear someone has lost their life because of crime, you're always a little bit saddened. But, initially it sounded like the owner, the person who did the shooting was doing the right thing because there was some threat to his life. But as we find out more information, it looks like he was only trying to protect his property. And as we cover in our classes and we tell everybody that comes in and wants to discuss it, and I qualify all this with I'm not a lawyer, but I've been involved in this for several decades, and there is no state, with the exception of Texas, that you can use deadly force to protect property. And we always tell people property can be replaced, but people can't. So we make that very clear distinction that you only use deadly force when you feel like there's an imminent threat to yourself or your family. And so if that's the case, if what we think happened now is he was just trying to keep the guy from stealing his car, then he should not have used deadly force in that situation. He should have got as much information as he could, call the police to let the police solve that crime, as they do a good deal of them, especially out here in this part of the area. So I'm saddened that he used that, and I hope that there's more to it that we don't know in this situation.
Yeah, I wondered about that myself, because several things could have made this. It could have been a different outcome if the guy hopped in the car, put it in drive, and was driving toward the homeowner. Then he feels his life is threatened, and he's okay with what happened, right? Legally.
Well, depending upon what he did before that, because you could argue he didn't need to come out of his house. And now a reasonable person could argue he went out to see why his car alarm was going off.
Sure.
And that's a reasonable thing to do. So it's really something that you're going to have to get all the facts, get all the evidence in, and it's not something we can try in the court of public opinion because we don't have everything. But it is an important lesson for everybody to take note of if you're going to carry a firearm or even have one in your home, and when you can and cannot use that level of force.
Well, as you and I had this conversation earlier, and your partner Ron was in the room with us, the conversation went toward the fact that you need to remember, if you are going to take on the responsibility of carrying a firearm, that you are not a police officer.
That's absolutely correct. You're not there to stop crime or to even solve crime. When you take on that responsibility, you're simply using that tool to protect yourself, your immediate family, others. You cannot assume that role of police officer. A police officer has specific training. They're also given specific powers under the law to do certain things. And with those powers, as long as they do things in the way they're supposed to, comes a certain level of protection that an officer is afforded. You as an individual are not going to be afforded that. So an example would be if I'm the initial aggressor in an incident, and I end up using deadly force in that situation, then I'm responsible for that deadly force. It doesn't matter if the guy was hurting me and about to do me severe bodily injury. I started the incident. So you have to be really careful about the use of deadly force, and you're always better off to de-escalate the situation rather than go to that option. That should always be your last option.
Right. And let's talk about the Castle Doctrine for a moment, because, people, the law has changed a little bit in Missouri over the years. Some people are under the belief that with the Castle Doctrine, anything that happens on their property is probably covered. This is an example of why that's not the case. But if you're in your car, somebody's trying to carjack you, and you fear for your life, then you are covered by the Castle Doctrine. But I think fear for your life is the key term there, correct?
Yes, you have to have a reasonable person has to have a reasonable belief that person's there to do them bodily harm. So if you wake up in the middle of the night and there's someone in your house, that's a reasonable assumption. They're there for you. They're not there for your TV and other property, or else they just wait till you leave and then go in and get it when nobody's there. So that's a reasonable assumption to make. Now, if you walk into the living room and they're walking out the front door with the TV, then, obviously they are there for your property. Again, you don't use deadly force in that situation. You allow them to leave because they're not a threat to you. So it's a little bit of a gray area. It depends on the situation. And we've had incidents where people have been intoxicated or high on drugs, and they've got the wrong house. They think they're at their house, and they're trying to get in. And even though they're being told it's not their house and to stop, they keep on going, and the homeowner ends up using deadly force. And there's some very famous 911 tapes of this happening in different places. That person has a reasonable belief that, okay, the person's so inebriated or intoxicated that they don't even know which house is theirs. This person could think, I'm an intruder in their home. They could do me harm. So basically, if you're in your home, you're in your vehicle, and the person is aggressing towards you, is coming towards you, then they're there for you. Other than that, if they're just trying to take property, then you let them have property. Now, if your child happens to be in the car, they're trying to take your car, that's a whole different scenario.
Sure. No, I understand that. We're talking to John Henderson, by the way, who runs the Range St. Louis West out in Baldwin. They're in the 14,800 block of Manchester Road. So let me ask this question. How do you feel about what do you tell your concealed carry holders, the people who go through training, when it comes to the insurance that's offered for people who carry concealed? And I know it wouldn't help necessarily in a case like this, but there are oftentimes wrongful death lawsuits that might stem from a shooting incident that you're involved in. Do you recommend people look at that insurance?
I recommend two things. Number one, have a good umbrella policy, because regardless of what happens inside your home insurance usually isn't going to be sufficient to cover that. So a good umbrella policy, they're relatively inexpensive. And then look at things like you have U.S. Law Shield, you have Defense Shield, you have U.S. Concealed Carries program. They're all good programs that provide a level of defense or level of support for you, and if you do have to defend yourself. But please keep in mind, if you use a firearm, if you discharge that firearm and injure someone else, there's going to be some type of legal battle there, even if you're completely in the right, and it's very obvious from the get-go. You might escape with very few legal expenses, but we always tell everybody the first thing you do is you call 911 and you tell them where you are. If somebody needs medical help, you tell them that. And when the police get there, you simply tell them, this man attacked me. I was afraid. I was fear for my life, and I'd like to say nothing else till my lawyer gets here.
Yeah.
And the police understand that. That's not going to make you look guilty. We all want to cooperate with the police. But the police would do the same thing if they're involved in a shooting. They're going to wait until their lawyer, their representative, gets there to really give their statement. And it also gives you time to calm down so that you're really seeing exactly what happened and you don't have that adrenaline hangover that's there when you're in that environment, because you're going to get an adrenaline rush. It happens to everybody.
Yeah.
So,
well,
you need to have a lawyer, that you can rely on, that's going to give you good advice and guide you through that process.
And it gets back to what I mentioned earlier, that even with these changes in the law so that you can carry concealed wherever you could open carry without necessarily having to go through these courses, what John's talking about here, education, is the reason those courses are so valuable.
That's exactly right. Even if you've grown up around firearms, even if you're ex-military, ex-police, and you know how to use that firearm, you know how to use it as a tool it's designed for, you need to know what the laws are and how the state that you live in, how they view the use of deadly force. Now, Missouri, we live in a great state where, we can protect ourselves. There are some states where even in your home you have a duty to retreat.
Jeez.
Now, Missouri just passed the Stand Your Ground law, so even if you're outside your home, on the street, you don't have a duty to retreat as long as you're legally able to be in that area
right.
to begin with. So that's good, but it doesn't mean just because you don't have a duty to retreat, you shouldn't retreat. You should always attempt to remove yourself from that situation without using force. But you need to understand all the implications that come along with the use of deadly force or force in general. And we've actually seen an uptick in concealed carry class participation since that they overrode the governor's veto. So more people are wanting more information about it and realize that, hey, I want to do this, but I really don't know enough to do it. So we've had people take the class with no intent of getting a permit just because they want to know what the rules are.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I appreciate that. Jason, Jason Church is just waving me down here. Just got a question.
Just wanted to break in here real quick. We had some breaking news. News 4 reporting that there's been an officer-involved shooting over in the Wellston area. So we'll get more information on that as it comes through, but we just wanted to make sure we made our listeners aware of that.
Very good, Jason. Thank you. John, thank you so much for your time. I do want to remind people about your program Downrange, which airs here on 97.1 on Saturday evenings, correct? Right after the Annie Fry show at 7 p.m.
Correct.
Very good.